All right, today we're going to deconstruct the genius of an absolute legend. We're going way beyond the movies, beyond the one-inch punch, to get to the core of what made Bruce Lee a master, not just of martial arts, but of life itself. We're going to unpack the actual equation he built. So here's our roadmap. We're going to break down his blueprint for mastery into 6 parts. We'll kick things off with the single fight that changed absolutely everything for him. Then we'll dig into the mind that forged his philosophy, define his core equation for success, see the systems he actually used to put it into practice, trace his incredible legacy, and finally, discover the one profound lesson this holds for every single one of us. So let's jump right in where Bruce Lee's revolution really began. And it wasn't with some epic moment of triumph, no. It was with a victory that left him feeling like a total failure. This is the story of the fight that forced him to rethink everything he thought he knew. Let's start with this one pivotal moment. In 1964, a fierce fight with a rival master left Bruce Lee victorious, yet profoundly frustrated. He realized his traditional movements were slow, cumbersome, and nearly cost him the match. Now, this wasn't just a physical fight, it was an ideological showdown. The battle against Wong Jack Men was supposed to be a showcase of his skill. But here's the thing, he won, but the match dragged on for what felt like an eternity, leaving him completely gassed. For a guy obsessed with efficiency, this was a massive failure. And, the incredible thing is the conclusion he came to. He didn't think, man, I need to do more cardio. No, he thought, my entire system is broken. He realized that the traditional, fancy forms he'd spent years mastering, they weren't assets at all. They were liabilities. They were chains, filled with what he called useless motion. All these flourishes and stances that might look cool, but served zero purpose in a real, messy fight. So it really makes you wonder, right? How can winning feel like losing? Well, for Bruce Lee, the answer was crystal clear. The goal wasn't just to win. It was to win with absolute maximum efficiency and directness. Winning ugly, winning by just wearing the other guy out, proved to him that his method was flawed at its very core. It was a crisis of philosophy. And that was the turning point. That hollow victory became the genesis of his life's work. It ignited this deep commitment to just ruthless simplicity. He decided right then and there to tear down his entire practice, to systematically strip away every single thing that wasn't efficient, effective, and direct. This was the moment the Bruce Lee equation was really born. So, what gave him the unique perspective to do this? To challenge centuries of tradition. The answer is really in these two opposing forces that forged his mind. On one side of the coin, you had the pure, raw chaos of his youth. Lee grew up in Hong Kong, getting into street fights all the time. This wasn't some theoretical martial art. This was about survival. It gave him this gut-level understanding that efficiency wasn't just a nice idea, it was a necessity. But then, on the other side of that same coin, you have this deep intellectual clarity. While he was at the University of Washington, he dove headfirst into philosophy, specifically Zen and Taoism. And that gave him the mental framework, ideas like flow, to systematize everything he'd learned on the streets. He was this perfect fusion of a street brawler and a deep philosopher. And from this fusion, he identified the true enemy. And it wasn't another fighter. It wasn't a rival school. The single greatest barrier to being effective, he realized, was internal, mental rigidity. That dogmatic, this is how we've always done it thinking. He believed that that kind of rigidity had to be broken down and thrown away to ever reach true mastery. Which brings us to the heart of it all, the Bruce Lee equation. And listen, this wasn't some vague philosophical idea. It was a systematic, repeatable blueprint for achieving peak performance in, anything. So at its core, the Bruce Lee equation is a systematic belief. It's the idea that efficiency and directness are the only true measures of what actually works. It's a philosophy where mastery isn't achieved by adding more stuff, but by constantly subtracting, by eliminating everything that is inessential. It's all about finding the truth by simplifying. He actually broke this equation down into 3 core interconnected principles. First, there's Jeet Kune Do, which was his personal art. Second, the anti-fixed system mandate, basically a rule for how to think. And third, the simplicity of motion, a rule for how to act. Let's break each of those down. Okay, first up, Jeet Kune Do, or the way of the intercepting fist. Now this is so much more than a fighting style. It's a philosophy of being ruthlessly pragmatic. The guiding principle is so simple but so powerful. Absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, and add what is specifically your own.
It demanded a constant self-audit. Does this technique work for me in this moment? If it does, keep it. If not, get rid of it. I don't care how sacred the tradition is.
And that leads us straight to his second principle, which is captured perfectly in his most famous quote, "Be like water." This is the anti-fixed system mandate. Lee believed that any fixed system, any rigid style, eventually becomes a cage. But water is formless. It can flow or it can crash. It adapts perfectly to whatever contains it. For Lee, our minds and our bodies have to be the same way, formless, adaptable, ready to flow around any obstacle.
And the third principle is where the rubber really meets the road, the simplicity of motion. This was almost like a law of physics for him. It's the systematic, relentless pursuit of the most direct line between 2 points, A to B. It didn't matter if it was a punch, a kick, or a life decision, the goal was to eliminate any wasted movement, any detour from the most efficient path to get the job done. It's all about economy of motion. Okay, so that's the philosophy. Sounds great, right? But how did he actually live it? How do you turn these huge ideas into a daily practice? Well, he used 2 core systems to basically force this new way of thinking and being.
His first system was a direct answer to that awful fight in 1964. He developed this protocol of deconstruction and minimalist training. He literally dismantled traditional forms, piece by piece, and threw out any stance or move that wasn't effective in a real fight. His new routine became obsessed with the core principles: perfect footwork, maximum striking power, and just drilling the fundamentals over and over to build a body capable of the most efficient movements imaginable.
But here's the thing, his revolution wasn't just physical. That was only half the battle. His second system was completely intellectual, philosophical synthesis and perpetual journaling. He knew that physical practice meant nothing if the mind behind it was still rigid.
Bruce Lee was an obsessive note-taker. I mean, we have thousands of pages of his thoughts on combat, philosophy, personal growth. But this journaling wasn't a diary. It was a systematic tool for intellectual self-audit. It's how he refined his ideas, how he worked on his equation, and how he made damn sure that his physical training was always perfectly aligned with his philosophical goals. It was the bridge between his mind and his body.
And when you put these 2 systems together, you see how he transformed himself. His evolution from this hot-headed kid on the streets of Hong Kong to a global icon. It's just one of the most remarkable stories of personal development you'll ever find. Let's trace that path and look at the impact he left behind. You can really see his life in 4 distinct stages. He starts as the rebellious street fighter, learning combat just to survive. Then he becomes the frustrated victor. That's the pivotal moment we keep coming back to. And that frustration pushed him to become the philosophical innovator, creating the whole equation and the systems we've just unpacked. And finally, through his movies and his teachings, he becomes a global icon whose ideas reach so far beyond martial arts.
And his actual concrete legacy is just profound. The Bruce Lee equation fundamentally changed the game. He basically institutionalized cross-training. The whole idea of taking the best from boxing, fencing, whatever, that comes directly from his absorb what is useful mantra. He made efficiency analysis a priority in all kinds of training. And of course, he popularized the concept of flow, making that peak performance state a goal for everyone, from athletes to artists.
So we've deconstructed his history, his philosophy, his systems. What's the final formless lesson for us? How do we take the Bruce Lee equation and actually apply it to our own lives?
If there is one single universal lesson you take from Bruce Lee's entire life, let it be this: the highest form of mastery is the absence of unnecessary effort. Real genius isn't about complexity. It's about simplicity. It's about getting the biggest result with the smallest output, by stripping away everything that doesn't matter.
And that leaves us with a very clear, very direct mandate, straight from Jeet Kune Do. Look at your life. Look at your work, your routines, your habits, and ruthlessly discard what is useless. Find the things you do just out of tradition, the things that waste your energy, the mental blocks that hold you back, and have the guts to just let them go. You know, Bruce Lee built his entire legendary career on a simple truth: complexity is the enemy of action. The Bruce Lee equation gave us a systematic blueprint for this idea of simplicity as ultimate mastery. It was a lifelong mission to remove the unessential so that the essential could finally speak. In the end, it all comes back to that one immutable rule he discovered for himself. Empty your mind, be formless, be like water.